first we're gonna talk about Australia. I I want to start by just wishing all of my friends in Australia well. I even have one who frequently joined chat and is a great person that I've chatted with a couple times. I'm not talking about Robert Shaw. This is someone different that I know. Sent me a message yesterday saying, "Hey man, I'm going off the grid. Me and my family, we're all gathering all of our things and we're going out into the country to live off the land for a while because we are afraid of what's going on with our government." And I mean, that was just like, wow, like this is the sign of what's happening out there. If I have, people are reaching out to me saying, "I'm going to miss your show. I just want to let you know I'm not going to be around as much. And, I wish you well. And I miss you in chat." And it's crazy. And this is, just look at this. So this is an article. This is from The Atlantic. Australia traded away too much liberty. How long can a democracy maintain emergency restrictions and still call itself a free country? And that is a good question. All right, I think that's a bigger question than just Australia, but we'll stay on Australia just for the sake of what we're talking about here. In a bid to keep the coronavirus out of the country, Australia's federal and state governments imposed draconian restrictions on its citizens. Prime Minister Scott Morrison knows that the burden is too heavy. Quote, "This is not a sustainable way to live in this country," end quote, he recently declared. One prominent civil libertarian summed up the rules by lamenting, quote, "We've never seen anything like this in our lifetimes," end quote. Up until now, one of Earth's freest societies, Australia has become a hermit continent. How long can a country maintain emergency restrictions on its citizens' lives while still calling itself a liberal democracy? Well, Australia has been testing its limits. Before 2020, the idea of Australia all but forbidding its citizens from leaving the country, a restriction associated with communist regimes, was unthinkable. Today, it's a widely accepted policy. Australia's borders are currently closed, and international travel from Australia remains strictly controlled to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. A government website declares international travel from Australia is only available if you are exempt or you have been granted an individual exemption. The rule is enforced despite assurances on other government websites dedicated to setting forth Australia's human rights treaty obligations, that the freedom to leave a country cannot be made dependent on establishing a purpose or reason for leaving. The nation's high court struck down a challenge to the country's COVID-19 restrictions. Quote, "It may be accepted that the travel restrictions are harsh. It may be also accepted that they intrude on individual rights," it ruled. But Parliament was aware of that. Until last month, Australians who are residents of foreign countries were exempt from the rule so they could return to their residence. But the government tightened the restrictions further, trapping many of them in the country too. Interstate travel within Australia is also severely restricted. The government of South Australia, one of the country's 6 states, developed and is now testing an app as Orwellian as any in the free world to enforce its quarantine rules. Returning travelers quarantining at home will be forced to download an app that combines facial recognition and geolocation. The state will text them at random times, and thereafter they will have 15 minutes to take a picture of their face in the location where they're supposed to be. Should they fail, the local police department will be sent to follow up with that person. Quote, "We don't tell them how often or when. On a random basis, they will have to reply within 15 minutes. This is from Premier Stephen Marshall. He explained, "I think every South Australian should feel pretty proud that we are the national pilot for the home-based quarantine app. You will own nothing and you will be happy. You should be proud of how amazing we are as your government on controlling you. He said that. We should be proud. South Australians should be proud. Every single one should be proud that we're going to control you to the point where we know exactly where you are when you're quarantining. Okay, but what I've seen in Australia is every single thing is ramping higher and harsher and harsher. You think it's going to end there? No way. No, it's going to get much worse. Other states also curtailed their citizens' liberty in the name of safety. The state of Victoria announced a curfew and suspended its parliament for key parts of the pandemic. Quote, to put this in context, federal and state parliaments sat during both world wars, the Spanish flu, and curfews have never been imposed, the scholar John Lee observed in an article for the Brookings Institute. In responding to a question about whether he had gone too far with respect to imposing a curfew, avoiding the question of why a curfew was needed when no other state had one, Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews replied, "It is not about human rights, it is about human life." It's for your own good. It's for your own good. That's essentially what they're saying. It gets worse. You think this is bad? Check this out. Unprecedented surveillance bill rushed through Parliament in 24 hours. Australian police can now hack your device, collect or delete your data, take over your social media accounts. What? This just happened this week. The Australian government has been moving towards a surveillance state for some years already. Now they're putting the nail in the coffin with an unprecedented surveillance bill that allows the police to hack your device, collect or delete your data, and take over your social media accounts without sufficient safeguards to prevent abuse of these new powers. I'm speechless. This is absolutely insane. This month, the Australian government has passed a sweeping surveillance bill, worse than any similar legislation in any other Five Eyes country. The Surveillance Legislation Amendment, Identify and Disrupt Bill 2020, gives the Australian Federal Police, AFP, and the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission, the ACIC, 3 new powers for dealing with online crime. Number 1, Data Disruption Warrant. Gives the police the ability to disrupt data by modifying, copying, adding, or deleting it. Number 2, Network Activity Warrant. Allows the police to collect intelligence from devices or networks that are used or likely to be used by those subject to the warrant. Number 3, Account Takeover Warrant. Allows the police to take control of an online account, social media essentially, for the purposes of gathering information for an investigation. The 2 Australian law enforcement bodies, AFP and ACIC, will soon have the power to modify, add, copy, or delete your data should you become a suspect in the investigation of a serious crime. If you are simply a suspect, you will now be, all of your rights are basically gone. This is absolutely bonkers. What is happening in Australia? Didn't Australia start as a prison colony long ago? Now, truth be told, I don't know much about Australian history. I was taught American history, and that's pretty much, I know a lot of the past couple hundred years of American history. But as far as Australia goes, what I know about it is that it was a prison state, right? Where they sent prisoners or something along those lines. It seems like they're returning to that. They're trying to lock down Australia and control it. What worries me is I learned recently how China is trying to take up all the land where anything that has to do with lithium batteries or this whole electric future, green energy, right? Silicon, rare earth metals. Greenland has a lot of them. Well, Australia has a lot of them as well. And I don't have anything offhand to show you guys, but I've read a few different things about how there's some people in the Australian government that may, this is, you know, something I've read, I can't confirm it, owe people in China stuff. And China might be trying to take over Australia. And it makes sense. I mean, as an American, China, we get 80% of our electric vehicle needs and any sort of all the stuff that we need. 80% of lithium comes from China. And they're going out and they have a $4.5 billion contract with Greenland to go mine there. We have some billionaires, Bezos and Bill Gates. I mean, all these guys, they're trying to go mine in Greenland also with like a $2 billion, $3 billion contract. But China's already there. They already have a contract for Greenland. They want the world's resources. They want the world going to China and saying, we need this stuff. And it's crazy. I'm going to talk about China more later on in the episode. And what you hear then is, they're not even being quiet about it. It's front page on their news media, what they're saying. And it is frightening. I think they want Australia. I think they want the world. Actually, I know they do. They've come out and said it multiple times. They straight up told Taiwan, when we invade you, America's not going to help. All right? So good luck. Oh, and by the way, America, we heard you have troops in Taiwan. You need to stop helping Taiwan. You need to get your troops out of there. Stop selling Taiwan anything now. What makes it worse is we have a man named Joseph Biden, who is the president. I don't think he has a spine. I think he had a spine once, and it has been eaten away and deteriorated into absolutely nothing. And I fear for that. I fear for my Australian viewers, my Australian friends that are out there, and just the Australian population, because it feels like it's just the first country to be as open about it as under the guise of it's for your own health. It's for human life. My goodness.